Thank you very much. Okay, let me start sharing my screen and we can double check if everything is working. So do you see my screen well now?
Yes.
Okay, let me just arrange this. Okay. Um, Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for inviting us to this lovely presentation series. It's pleasure to be here and pleasure to talk to you, everyone. So today we'll be talking about international collaboration between scientists in traditionally non-central science systems. I'll be sharing novel data from Chinese and Turkish science systems. So I am Dr. Yusuf Iqbal Oldaç from Lingnan University. I am currently doing a Research Grants Council funded postdoc fellowship here. And my colleague, my co-author is Dr. Lily Yang, who couldn't join us as Christian explained, but I'll do my best to present her parts as well. So we will have a full, nice presentation. So let's move to the next slide. So outline. In this presentation, I'll start with our positionality because that's important for any research. And then I will move to our theoretical background. I'll talk about what theories we draw from. And then we will present, well, it's me, but I will switch from I to we because it's just last minute change. So I hope you'll understand. So we'll present two studies. First one is connectivity at the national level, which is the paper that we just published. And the second one is actually about individual factors in connectivity. This study is finished, but it's currently under review, not published yet. But we thought it's best to share with you some of the preliminary findings so that we can have a richer discussion together. And then afterwards, I'll talk about future questions and future research with you. So let's start with our positionality. I am Turkish and Lily is a Chinese scholar. We both are based in Hong Kong. Our background initially ignited our interest in researching the scientific collaborations between Turkey and China. This research is part of a larger project. It is part of our larger interest in studying science systems that have been traditionally not perceived as central. I'll come to this. I'll come to what we mean by traditionally non-central, because without explaining it may sound a bit vague. So the existing research on science mostly focuses on Anglo-American or European systems. Much research is needed to unearth what is going on outside of this sphere. So expect us to publish about other traditionally non-central contexts too. That's the plan. So our theoretical background, we mainly draw from three theoretical discussions. One is global multiscalarity in science. This line of theorization mainly builds from Marginson's work, who in turn builds from Massey and Lefebvre and others. Of course, there are many others important work being done on this, but these are the ones that influenced us and we want to acknowledge. So science is global, according to this view, and it is multi-scalar. The idea is to not fall into methodological nationalism or methodological globalism traps. Neither shows the full picture. We want to include different scales in science. This definition is helpful for this. Globalization is the widening, deepening, and speeding up of worldwide interconnectedness. So we're interested in the interconnectedness, the connections between these different scales. I will explain what we mean by scale in a second. So there are actors at various scales whose interests sometimes align and sometimes don't. And that affects global science. And that's important for our research. So what do we mean by scales? So as you can see, this is a table from another research of us. Well, we're not presenting this paper now. It's also under review. Hopefully at some point it'll come out. So at top, we have different scales we highlighted, like individual scale, institutional, local, national, regional, global. So Simon Marginson, we mentioned him. He has this famous paper focusing on glonacal, like global, national, and local, right? We thought there are more to this. It's more complicated. So it's more complex. We added regional, institutional, and individual scales to the discussion. And actually, in his latest paper, he also adds this regional aspect to the discussion, and he accepts how important it is. So the literature also is going towards this way. It's not just global, national, local anymore. So under this, we have actors. We identified actors for each scale. Let me not read all the table, but you can have a look, and I'll just pick up some important parts. For individual scale, for example, we have researchers. At the national scale, we have, nation states. I don't know, for institutional, we identified 3 types of institutions, but this is not, exhaustive. So universities is the easiest one to predict under the institutional level, but there are also commercial entities like ranking institutions, also philanthropist institutions that provide funding. So these institutions shape science, and they're also shaped by it. So we thought they are important, and their agency, actor role should be incorporated. As you can see in the table, all actors have differing main drivers, their motivations. Different things motivate them to contribute or shape science. And they have different normative centers. Like, for example, for the national scale, it's not hard to guess, it's nation state. Nation state could be pretty strong in shaping science and facilitating certain kinds of science and not other kinds, etc. For global, for example, there's no declared science, but Anglo-American systems tend to have a more normative position in this based on our critical perspective. So a second line of theorization that we build a lot on is Wagner's theorization. Wagner's theorization of network science has influenced most science researchers. With increasing global connectivity, mainly due to the establishment of internet after the 1990s and everything that comes with it, such as emails, Zoom, etc., the practice of science as we know it has changed in a substantial way. Wagner has shown the crucial importance of networks in global scientific connectivity. She used network analysis to understand the scientific connections in the world. Nodes are researchers and edges are their connections according to this approach, and connections could be analyzed through co-authorships and co-citation analysis, etc. Her findings have implications not only for individual researchers, such as individual in-person networks, but also for the national science scale. She argued that science is pluralizing globally and that more countries are joining the global network of science. Science is globally networked, yes, but these networks are not equally distributed. That is something that we want to look in more detail. Some nodes and localities are more central in this global connectivity, while others are non-central, which is a term we use a lot. So this needs to be explored further. So let me come to the question, what is traditionally non-central science system? The finding that some nodes and localities are non-central in this global connectedness made us think, what could be the reasons behind this? And can this change? These are important questions for us. So the term traditionally acknowledges that the non-central status may change over time, especially considering the rapidly increasing Chinese science system and also other systems. They're rapidly increasing. There are already signs that global scientific connectivity is becoming less hierarchical, and traditionally central science systems gradually lose their capacity to hegemonize and control the flows. But we need to explore this further. So an important question is, what could be impacting the networks, and if agency has a role in it? There are existing discussions in the literature addressing this question, the question of what could be impacting the networks. But they plant a rigid and unchangeable picture, according to Marginson and Shin. So, which, for example, world systems theory could be given as an example to this. It's a very good theory, and it gives us good perspective, analytical clarity about understanding what's going on around the globe. But Wallerstein says that this system, this unequal system, is unlikely to change, and only situation it changes is the abolishment of all the capitalist system, which is not wrong. It's very useful theory and to understand it. But we thought there may be more to this. Maybe it's not as rigid. That's what we're thinking. Also, there's this understanding, theorization about global north and global south or east. Again, very good theory. It's very good for us to understand what's going on in the privileged parts and what's going on in the underprivileged parts, right? But this theory doesn't specifically focus on how change may happen in this. It explains us very clearly What parts of the world are more central in this thing, like global north, and what parts are disadvantaged? And there are discussions of language divide, for example. If you speak English, if you write in English, you're part of global science. If you're not good at it, you're not included. This is also an important discussion in the literature. So we say that it is true that the existing networks go through some central science systems. We accept this, and it's a situation everyone accepts. Like, let us give some examples. Like scientists from non-central systems meet at conferences in traditionally central locations. Like I'm going to Washington, D.C. in February, and I'm meeting a Malaysian colleague, but actually he is actually closer to me here. But we meet at the central location, right? That creates some inequality. Also, it is easier and encouraged to collaborate with scientists in the central science systems if you're based at a non-central system. You simply have more, what is it called? The institutions facilitate this better. And then publishing houses are usually located in central locations, creating gatekeeping positions. And if someone gatekeeps, that means they can hegemonize what is researched, what is not, etc. So these are important points to discuss. So these make science unequal. So in such a situation, what if those non-central connectivity, those in the non-central connectivity start collaborating, not through a central system, but directly with each other? This will likely result in a less hierarchical globally networked science system. It's not new, it's discussed by Caroline Wagner a lot, actually. So the central nodes will not change immediately with this, decentralized collaborations. Rather, networks will still concentrate around traditionally central locations, such as the US and UK systems. Nevertheless, the traditionally central ones will gradually lose their hegemonizing power or capacity for controlling the flows, because by definition, they will not be so central anymore. So how could this happen? That's an important question. We think that the agency of the actors that I just shared in global science could play an important role here. There are a few studies indicating this, but this argument needs further exploration. We're not, we need to see this more. We define agency in global multiscalar science as freedom to achieve whatever the actors within the global science system, such as individuals, institutions, nations, etc., decide to achieve in a responsible manner. Why is this important? Like, think of a network with 3 nodes, where the 2 are non-central systems, like developing science systems, etc., connected to each other through a central node. So we're looking at this. There are 2 figures in this slide. So the one on the bottom. So you see they're connected through a central node here. So in such a position, the central node will gatekeep the connectivity. And this means that this node will set the agenda and have more say overall than the non-central nodes. While the connectivity among non-central science systems established through a central node is by no means wrong, we can do this, no problem. But the newly established connectivity among non-central nodes is hard to be controlled and hegemonized by any central node. That's the thing. So look at the triangle at the top. All are connected to each other, less hierarchical, and one cannot gatekeep the knowledge flows, the funding flows, etc. So by establishing connectivity among non-central nodes, we are in a way democratizing this global network of science. That's the thinking behind our research. So let me give some context for this presentation. Our presentation today will include data from Turkey and China. Turkey and China are excellent instances of countries exerting their agency in building up their national science systems. The existing data signals a booming connectivity between the 2 systems by demonstrating a stark 100-fold increase in knowledge co-production in science and engineering between 1996 and 2018. Moreover, this increased scientific collaboration is meaningfully shaping people's lives and future. For example, the new 5G standard for communication technology, which is now being accepted as industry standard worldwide, is the result of a Turkish scholar's scientific breakthrough and years of Chinese R&D investment on it. So let me briefly introduce the Chinese science system. China's science has grown dramatically in both size and quality in the last 2 decades. In the previous 10 years, China's research output has increased at about double the global average yearly rate. In 2016, China surpassed the United States as the largest systems for producing English publications, despite English is not the native language. China is now leading the world in highly cited articles in mathematics, while in computer science, it is getting closer to the top. Now to the Turkish science system. Turkish science system has been growing rapidly in the last decades too. Choi identifies Turkey as a top rising star in a study that looks at scientific collaborations among 36 OECD nations. Turkey is also a leading science system both by size and growth speed among Muslim majority nations, a new study shows. Between 1995 and 2010, Turkey experienced the greatest growth. It's 133%. In the share of degree centrality among all OECD nations. While Turkey had the fewest patents among OECD nations in 1995, it was placed 18th in 2010 after a 55-fold growth. So Turkey has increasingly elevated itself up to preferred nations for international collaborations between 1995 and 2010. This upward trend in scientific performance continued till 2016, but slowed down between 2016. In 2016, let's say. And this continued till 2018. Web of Science data indicate the growth rate has turned back to its normal routines afterwards, but it's best to keep a close eye on this. I also have to say, not everything is sweetness and light. Although the Chinese science system is sometimes referred to as a science powerhouse now, partly because of its development happened too recently and rapidly, it is not yet playing a central role in the rule and agenda setting in global science. This also applies to Turkish system. And impact-wise, they can still improve further. Hence, our use of traditionally non-central science systems, the terminology. Now to the differences between the two. Despite the fact that both systems have a similar feature of fast growth, they have significant differences. To begin with, the two systems are significantly different in size. In Turkey, there are 207 tertiary institutions. In China, there are 2,663. Given the population size of China and Turkey, like the differences, such a difference in the number of institutions makes sense. Furthermore, China is currently investing far more heavily in its R&D capacity than Turkey. China spent 2.15% of a much larger GDP on research and development in 2017, whereas Turkey only spent 0.96% in the same year. This suggests that China's higher education and research environment may be better supported than Turkey's. Another point is that Chinese science system seems to be heavily invested in STEM areas, while Turkish science system has a relatively more diversified focus, meaning a more proportionate focus on social science and humanities. So these are the background. Happy to discuss more afterwards if necessary. Now we would like to move on to share some of our ongoing inquiries on traditionally non-central science systems, with special attention to two studies that are intrinsically connected. The two studies have been done, with one paper already published very recently in Asia Pacific Education Review, and another one currently under review. In the end, we would also like to briefly share with you some of our ongoing investigations and future plans following this line of inquiry. The first study is a bibliometric analysis into the rapidly growing scientific connectivity between the Chinese and Turkish science systems. The aim is to provide a comprehensive picture of the connectivity between the two national science systems situated within the global connectivity. The analysis showed rapidly increasing connectivities between the two systems in the last decade. Then we became interested in why individual scientists based in China and Turkey decided to work with each other on research. In other words, what led to the increased international collaborations between China-based and Turkey-based scientists, and how? We manually collected bibliometric and individual data to conduct a multiple linear regression analysis to address this. As the paper of the first study is already out, we shall keep the discussion of the first study rather short in order to talk more about the second. If you're interested, we encourage you to have a look at this recent paper. Okay. So let's look at the first study. This bibliometric analysis includes an analysis of co-authorship data, a global network analysis of countries, and an investigation of funding agencies and organizations driving the connectivity. In particular, we collected bibliometric data from the Web of Science database. The Web of Science database was selected because both countries encouraged their researchers to publish in outlets covered by this database. But we also acknowledge that the database does not cover all the scientific work. This simply is to make the study feasible. This table demonstrates the criteria employed for the collection of data. All the downloaded papers include at least one Turkey-based and one China-based authors, and may include authors based in other countries. Only STEM area papers were included in this study. So you can see the criterion here. Let me move to the next slide. So we'd like to go through some of our findings by focusing on 4 aspects: knowledge co-production between China and Turkey, country region-based global network analysis, funding agencies that are financially supporting the joint research output, and organizations involved in the collaboration. So Chinese-Turkish research collaboration in STEM fields can be dated back to at least 1988. This is also what we can get from Web of Science, let's say. But between 1988 and 2007, the Chinese-Turkish research collaboration was minimal. As you can see, not much is going on. The collaboration went through an exponential increase afterwards, starting from 2009. It goes like, one of those COVID figures that we have been seeing before, not anymore, thankfully, much. So it is evident that within STEM fields, the research collaboration primarily focuses on physics, followed by medicine and biology, environmental science, and engineering. Physics is quite strong in this collaboration, and we can discuss the reasons behind it. So the venues for Chinese-Turkish joint research publications reveal multiple pieces of information. First, they reveal the areas where research cooperation takes place. The table here shows the number of publications in the top 20 most popular venues. Second, the editorial team of the journal and geographical location of a conference can reflect researchers' preferences in submitting their research outputs. As the table shows, countries including the USA, Germany, UK, Switzerland, France, and Italy are where the institutional affiliations of the most popular journals, editorial board, and members locate. Meanwhile, scientists in mainland China also play a relatively significant role in these popular journals. Third, with regard to the citation impact of the joint publications, at least those joint publications in the 20 most popular venues are of relatively high citation impact, as shown by the journal's impact factors and Web of Science journal citation report in respective fields. But these are the top ones, so we need to acknowledge that. So the Chinese-Turkish research cooperation is primarily multilateral, involving researchers based at numerous countries, regions besides China and Turkey. In addition to China and Turkey, there are other countries involved in the Chinese-Turkish research cooperation, as can be seen here. Table here presents the top 20 countries that have involved in the largest number of research publications. The USA is the largest player besides China and Turkey. Following the USA are countries including Germany, Italy, England, France, and Russia. Such a result, to a large extent, aligns with the findings from the analysis of funding agencies and organizations later. So in order to unpack general patterns of research collaboration involving researchers in China and Turkey, we conducted a co-authorship analysis based on analysis by country region using VOS Viewer program. The figure here illustrates the collaboration networks. 3 main clusters emerged from the analysis. Because of the time, we shall not get into the details, but we can have a further look in the Q&A session if you're interested. And more details are already provided in the paper anyway. So the funding agency related data, examining who have financially supported the joint research between China and Turkey, can reveal the main stakeholders driving the connectivity and imply whether Chinese and Turkish researchers play a major role in it. As table here demonstrates, the National Natural Science Foundation of China, NSFC, is the largest funding agency In addition to the NSFC, among the top 20 funding agencies that have funded the largest number of joint publications, there are 2 more Chinese funding agencies. There's only 1 Turkish funding agency among the top 20. The funding agencies in Europe countries and the USA are playing a significant role in supporting research cooperation involving Chinese and Turkish researchers. Notably, funding agencies in Latin America countries, including Brazil and Colombia, have also been involved in the research cooperation, with 3 top 20 funding agencies in total. It is evident that there is not a single dominant player in supporting research cooperation involving Chinese and Turkish researchers. The diverse funding sources imply the wide interests in supporting international research collaboration and partly explain why European and American institutions are at the center of the Chinese-Turkish research connectivity. Notably, all of the top 20 funding agencies are government-funded agencies without industry or philanthropy agencies. Thus, it is fair to argue that it is mainly governments that are financially supporting the Chinese-Turkish research collaboration. The institutions involved in the Chinese-Turkish research cooperation demonstrate a different picture compared to what the funding agencies have shown before. The table here includes the 20 institutions that have been involved in the highest joint research publications. China has the institution that has been involved in the largest number of joint publications, which, however, is the only one institution in the top 20 institutions. Similarly, only 1 Turkish institution is included in the top 20 institutions. However, interestingly, there are 6 Russian institutions in the top 20, showing the importance of Russian researchers in the Chinese-Turkish research connectivity, especially in physics, despite a less visibility of Russian financial investment. Other big players include institutions in Italy, the US, France, Germany, Greece, and Switzerland. Except for Russian institutions, the other countries' institutions to a certain extent conform with the visibility of funding agencies in these countries. Such confirmation arguably implies a reasonable return to the country's financial investment in research collaboration. Considering governments' major roles in funding the research collaboration, such a confirmation may also indicate the alliance between governments and researchers in facilitating scientific connectivity. So let's discuss this study and then we'll move on to the next one. The research co-authorship analysis shows that accompanying the increasing collaboration between Chinese and Turkish science systems is the expanding connections among countries across the world. The cooperation is primarily multilateral rather than bilateral. Various countries have been involved, including both traditionally central ones and non-central ones. As the clusters of the co-authorship map suggests, although certain traditionally central countries remain important in the Chinese-Turkish cooperation, they are not dominating it, echoing Marginson's findings. Regarding funding agencies of the cooperation, there is no single dominant player either. Certain national governments of the traditionally non-central countries are important financial supporters for the cooperation, implying their agency and ambition in developing their national science capacities and breaking their dependence on the traditionally central countries. Arguably, the agency of non-central countries is leading the increasing pluralization and multipolarization of the global science systems. Agency has the potential to challenge the existing unequal relations and build a more equal global science system. The findings suggest possible ways to further develop national science capacities and create a less hierarchical global science. For example, it is important to encourage and support the exercise of agency by various stakeholders. A crucial aspect of exercising national government's agency is the provision of institutional support for science communities to establish and expand global networks. However, in reality, national governments often discourage international collaboration of science communities. Take the examples of visa and immigration regulations and the regulations on spending research money overseas. We argue that the concerted efforts between national governments and science communities are crucial. Notably, despite the increasing visibility of certain traditionally non-central science systems, African countries and Central and Western Asian countries are still largely absent in the overall picture of Chinese-Turkish cooperation. There is still a long way to go in pluralizing and enhancing global justice in science. Following the above discussions, we then hope to unpack factors relating to increased international research collaboration between China-based and Turkey-based scientists. We argue that such investigations can reveal new insights into how various actors in global science, especially the national governments, institutions, and individual scientists, can work together to reciprocally work towards their own goals and common good of global science. So the various actors in global science have heterogeneous but often mutually reciprocal pursuits in seeking for global connections. For individual scientists, global connections may help them create better knowledge, enhance their academic recognition, increase the citation of their scientific outputs, and provide better access to research funding. These are what literature says. In general, these outcomes are conducive to the institutional pursuits of academic prestige and resources, and national pursuits of scientific competitiveness. As Melguizo and Strober show, in maximizing their individual prestige, faculty members simultaneously maximize the prestige of their departments and institutions. However, the global dynamics of science are way more complex than the above reciprocal relationships. As discussed, global science is not an equal ground for all players. Between national governments, there exists fierce competition for international talent and competition to create the strongest research universities. With the growing geopolitical tensions and conflicts between countries, global science connectivity can no longer be taken for granted. As the major sponsor and regulator in science, as the major sponsor and regulator in science, national governments have the potency to push back on the international collaboration in science. Take the example of governments' roles in hampering Chinese-US collaborations. Although the growing global science connectivity is decoupling science from the nation state's priorities and policies, national governments, migration policies, and financial investment continue to be of paramount importance to global science connectivity. Research also shows that individual scientists' behaviors are associated with the institutional policies. In other words, incentives at institutional and national levels continue to make a difference in individual scientists' decisions on international collaboration. You see different actors at different scales impacting science. So as such, we proposed two research questions building on this literature. First, what factors may lead to increased international collaborations between China-based and Turkey-based scientists? And second, how do these factors influence the international collaboration between these scientists? And with these two contexts, we're trying to understand the global things going on in central, traditionally non-central science systems. So literature suggests that a variety of factors, including gender, here you see the list, mobility of individual values, predilections, informal connections, formal agreements, and policy incentives can be associated with scientists' decision about international collaboration. In light of the literature and in order to address the two research questions, we included one continuous dependent variable in this study, which is number of collaborative papers, and a group of predictor variables, which are gender, country location, previous work in the other country, national initiative, city tier, institution type, and PhD location. Then a multiple linear regression analysis was used to analyze the prediction of the dependent variable by the predictor variables outlined above. We selected this analysis technique because there were one continuous dependent variable and several factors, several other predictor variables to address the research questions outlined here. So a novel data set was created for this study. The dataset is a profile data of all scientists who have published at least 2 Chinese-Turkish collaborative papers in the purposefully selected 5 research areas. We used multiple sources to create this original dataset. First, we collected publication-related data from Web of Science database. Only articles that had at least 1 China-based and 1 Turkey-based authors were included as per our research aims. We selected one subfield for each of the 6 research areas proposed by OECD, except for humanities research area. The reason for not choosing a field from humanities research area was that there were too few Chinese-Turkish collaborations in this area. The 5 selected fields were basic medical research, computer and information sciences, economics and business, environmental engineering, and agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. These fields are selected on the basis that 1, they do not contain 100+ authorships, since this kind of collaborations may have different implications. 2, both sides have similar numbers of listed authors contributing to the collaboration. And 3, they are not concentrated in only specific localities and include large and small cities as well. Before finalizing the dataset for the analysis, we implemented a data cleaning procedure. The data cleaning procedure decreased the initial total number of 637 scientists to 605 scientists. In the final dataset, we had data on 2,256 number papers of collaborative papers from 605 scientists in total. Okay, in this table, mean, standard deviation, and bivariate Pearson correlation values were calculated. You can see here. All the predictor variables are significantly correlated with the dependent variable. Other variables correlate with each other as well, but no value is higher than 0.9. This indicates that there was no multicollinearity issue among the variables. Excuse me. We also checked other assumptions and cleaned the data accordingly. So here are the results. The MLR model was significant, which is good, at a level of 0.05. The R-squared value revealed that the model explained 8% of total variance in the outcome variable. This indicates that though the MLR model points out to significant predictors, these are not all the variables affecting international scientific collaborations. This is understandable because the complexity of international collaborations. For example, sometimes a natural disaster brings scientists together, which is hard to account or predict. The table here provides the results of the MLR analysis. Looking at the unique individual contributions of the predictors, the results show that 3 variables significantly contributed to the number of international collaborative papers between Turkey and China, which was our first research question. These 3 variables were male over female, previous work in the other country, and institution type, universities over research institutions. In contrast, the other 5 factors, as listed here, do not have significant effects on the collaboration. So let's go through them in detail. As just outlined, the findings reveal that there are 3 major factors leading to increased international research collaboration between China-based and Turkey-based scientists. The significant effect of gender in collaboration is consistent with the existing literature. The analysis indicated that being a male scientist over female leads to 7.3% increase in the number of internationally collaborated papers in China-Turkey collaborations. Our findings not only support the existing literature, but confirm that gender difference also exists in collaboration between non-central science systems. The model also indicates that a previous work experience in the collaborating country leads to a 15.5% increase in the number of internationally collaborated papers. This one is the strongest. These findings suggest that for research collaboration between non-central science systems, the personal connections established from a prior mobility to the specific non-central science system is significant. Not just any mobility, but to mobility to that country. This indicates that any country or institution intending to increase their scientific collaborations with another country or institution should focus on developing policies that promote in-person mobilities. Another factor leading to the increased Chinese-Turkish research collaboration is the type of the institution with which a scientist is affiliated. According to the model, being a university scientist compared to being a research institute scientist leads to 13.1% increase in the number of internationally collaborated papers. It should be noted that the relevance of institution type is more important to China-based scientists than Turkey-based scientists. In Turkey, these things are recently introduced. And the statistical model indicates that a China or Turkey-based scientist receiving an overseas PhD education versus a domestic one does not significantly influence the Chinese-Turkish research collaboration. This finding highlights the importance of PhD location for establishing increased international research collaborations. Previous research shows that scientists who receive PhDs overseas are more likely to be involved in international collaboration with their study destinations. But these studies did not investigate the increased collaborations with third-party locations. Thus, this finding adds nuance to the literature by studying the situation of international collaborations between traditionally non-central science systems. Obtaining a PhD education in a traditionally central science system, such as the US, may lead to increased collaborations with that system afterwards, but not necessarily with other traditionally non-central science systems. And neither Turkey to China or China to Turkey, they don't send a lot of PhD students to each other. So this is a nuance added to the literature. Also, the city location and the national initiative of the institution do not have significant effects on the Chinese-Turkish collaboration. Literature reveals that scientists in large global cities are more frequently involved in international collaborations. However, the findings in this study add a further nuance into the literature that though large cities may be associated with increased international collaborations at the conflated global level, such collaborations may not necessarily be with non-central science systems. With the general preference of collaborating with scientists at top institutions in central systems, scientists in large cities may have more opportunities to collaborate with central established systems than others. The national initiative of the institution is an indicator of the national status of the institution and overall support the institution receives from the government. The insignificant association between the national initiative and the Chinese-Turkish research collaboration implies that whether a scientist works at a top institution in China or Turkey does not influence their likelihood of collaborating with scientists in the other country. Perhaps this finding is because that the institutional incentives and environment are not yet playing a visible role in facilitating research collaboration between non-central science systems in the two countries. Going back to the literature, it is largely the individual scientist's agency and personal connections that make the research collaboration happen. Again, confirming the idea that global science connectivity ultimately depends on individual scientists' collaboration, as argued by our colleagues like Marek Quick or Caroline Wagner. Still, the national and institutional level incentives can make a difference in influencing individual scientists' behaviors, as the study has shown. The above discussion implies heterogeneity in individual scientists' motivation for international research collaboration. The motivation for collaborating with central and non-central science systems can vary. While preferential attachment and accumulative advantage are the main characteristics of scientists seeking to collaborate with colleagues at top institutions in central science systems, their collaborations with those in non-central systems is mostly a continuation of the previous existing personal connections. As the international research collaboration between non-central science systems is only emerging and increasing in a rapid rate, there's a need to pay special attention to this emerging phenomenon in studying international research collaboration and global science. So I am aware of the time. I'm coming close to 45 minutes. So let us talk about future questions now, and then I will give the floor back to Christian. So I'll be brief here. So what are we doing or want to do in the future? So one question is, how does agency work out differently at different scales? As we have highlighted earlier, there are different scales, right? And all have some motivations. Individuals have different perspectives, institutions, national level. So these need to be researched in more detail. Also, those who study network global science must build on quantitative data, including the two studies that we just shared here. Qualitative data may provide deeper perspectives. So that's what we're doing. Currently, we have a fieldwork ongoing. We're interviewing, and now we did not limit this fieldwork to Turkey and China only, and we have other contexts. Hopefully in the future, we'll be publishing on this. Also, how can the non-central science systems build capacity in a sustainable way? That's also an important question for us. Is it by collaborating with a central node or by collaborating with a peer in a non-central node? Or maybe through triangulation, like one and two, like combining non-central and central. These are important questions. We recently started a quantitative analysis for this with a colleague in the US. Hopefully, this is like the beginning of the project, but we would like to, in the future, share the findings with you, hopefully, if everything goes well, let's say. So these are the references and further reading. Happy to answer all your questions and hope to, if you guys want to ask anything later on, these are the email addresses, my colleagues. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. It was a super interesting presentation, and I think that we can have the uh, opportunity to open the discussion and ask our colleagues who are present over here to discuss your findings. And I'm really curious and looking forward to the discussion because I see that the variety of scholars present during our seminar today will grant that you'll for sure get the questions from all possible lines of questioning. And I would like to add something to the mix, like warming up the discussion before we open the floor. And I would like to ask you more philosophical questions, I would say, like one technical and one philosophical. Like there is a long and old discussion in world system theory that was opened by Andre Gunder Frank about the position of China in world system infrastructure. I would say when we had a seminar with Simon and Shin, we tried to discuss this issue of China presented as traditionally non-central actor. And this discussion in world system theory suggests, I would say, in line with historical data, that what we observe currently is only China going back to its historical traditional place of being a central system or central world system of in itself rather than a non-traditional traditionally non-central actor. And it will probably explain something in terms of the dominance that China exercise in the Turkish-Chinese connectivity, I would say. But I would be really curious, what do you think about uh, describing China as traditionally non-central actor? There are any controversies that you can locate in this move? And second, more technical question would deal with, as this is not my field of great expertise, but I wonder how would your data look like if you would correct it for, I don't know, like filtering out all the papers that are not either led by a leading author from Chinese institution or leading author from Turkish institution. How many papers led by either Turkish or Chinese scholar would be left in the database? Because my assumption is that a lot of this connectivity goes simply like a lot of international great scale collaboration of Polish scholars that they simply provide some calculations for large physics, like research and so on. But I think that in your picture, having China in the mix, there would be much more in that. Like China, I assume that the number of funding from Chinese institutions would suggest that there are like a leading role of some Chinese researchers in these collaborations as well. And I really like this element of showing how much in the picture there are like Russian institutions still, and they will not evaporate like in the context of war. Okay, thank you. There are like two starting questions. Do you want to address them right now, or do you want to collect some more?
It's okay. I can start,
Okay,
and
start. And
later on, yeah,
anyone who wants to
yeah.
add to the question pool, please put your hand up, and I will give you a voice. Okay, go on, Yusuf.
Okay, so I will start with your questions then. Thank you very much. Good questions, and actually, it'll be nice to clarify them. So the first one is about how do we conceptualize China? Uh, so for China, as we said, we don't say non-central system, but it's not traditionally central. So it may change. But Lily and I, we both agree that although China has been rapidly increasing, and it's very currently quantitatively very strong science system, and citation impact wise, it's catching up. But it's still not deciding, shaping the research agenda globally. It's publishing a lot, but not the shaping. That's the thing. That's an important thing. For example, when you look at central, the traditionally central ones like the US, they are shaping the agenda and they have gatekeeping roles, etc. So that is a main distinction that we want to highlight. So the norms and the agenda is not shaped by China, although it is going up rapidly. And the main reason why it may not be shaped by China is could be, and what we think together with Lily is, it's the rapid increase. All these big changes happened actually quite quickly. We couldn't talk about this such rapid in development just 2 decades before. So it's very recent, and it's very much related to that figure we showed you, like that exponential increase starts 2007, etc., with Turkey, but probably with some others they have started early 2000s or second half of 2000s, let's say. So it's very recent. So and the picture is changing rapidly. So that those all are needed to be explained. And in this connectivity, we also acknowledge this in the paper. This Chinese science system is the stronger one, but connections between them actually benefit both as well as global science, because it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. The more contribution to science, the better, and the better we understand the world. And it's better to have from different colors, different cultures, we get this knowledge created. Your second question, if you take the lead authors out, how much of the picture change? That's actually, I need to add a nuance to that question. It will change significantly for the first study, but not so much in the second study. So the first study, because we did not exclude extensively authored papers, and that was on purpose, because we wanted to see like the full picture, what's going on here. The majority of papers, as we said, it's multilateral collaborations, which is, I think, good to highlight and good to see. This is the nature of connectivity between the two. A lot are multilateral. So in that one, especially for example, CERN studies, etc., if we take the leading authors out, the picture will change. But the changed picture is that the picture we want to have, is that will be half of the picture going on. But in the second one, we didn't include, we set a limit. 100 plus authorships are excluded. So that one is more about how individuals are motivated. So that was crucial for the second study, because in a collaboration where you have 2,000 authors, it's a very different dynamic. So thank you for asking that question.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf.
I hope it covers. And yeah.
Yeah, but I'm really inspired by your answer. So my screen showing Rasmus as the first in line, and then Zach. So let's collect two questions, and then once again Yusuf will answer, and we'll collect some more.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Yusuf, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting. So briefly, my question is, what role does the narrative of science excellence play in this process towards deeper global connectivity? And I'm asking because you were using words like equality and democratization on a global scale, that deeper connectivity is producing equality and sort of this sense of democracy. And that's interesting to me because often it seems to me, at least, that on the national level, terms like equality and democracy, or democratization and equalization, are delegitimized by the science excellence narrative. Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, those terms, how do they play together, or what's the interplay between those terms and the science excellence narrative, in your view? Thank you.
Okay, Zehra.
Thank you, Yusuf, for your presentation. As a Turkish scholar and also as a person who works for research evaluation systems, I was about to ask you about qualitative part of this study, because I think you will find more on this topic with the qualitative analysis. Because for Turkish research evaluation system, the system totally based on numbers, and I think the research evaluation system does not support collaborative papers. For example, if you have a co-author, your points are divided to number of co-authors, and the system does not support co-authorship. But Turkish scholars still have strong collaboration networks, that just because the limited funding opportunities in Turkey. Do you have any results for qualitative results for this? What motivates researchers to collaborate? Funding opportunities, or the opportunity to publish more papers with collaborative authors, or having a name in their fields? What do you think? Do you have any results, qualitative results on this issue?
Okay, Yusuf, go on.
Okay. Thank you both for those questions. I tried to take some notes, and I'll do my best to answer them. So the first one is about Science Excellence Initiative and the equality and inequality understanding. How does that measure? I think there is, like, again, competing interests in this. Within nations, they may be doing this to support put out, for example, the national initiative, global research universities, understandings, etc. The general understanding for that, I guess, is that nations have limited monies, and if they want at least some of their universities to be ranked highly in the system, they create these hierarchies, which I mean is not a very good thing, what we would love to see, but it is a policy frame, and it is there, and seems like this is gaining traction globally. Many states, China has been doing this for a long time, Russia has this, and Turkey also has been creating this, like the Research Universities Initiative. Although Turkey is new to this game, but it is there. So when you look at the global competition or different, then you have a different dynamic. Now it is not about some within the system, some are good, some are not, but it's more about how these science systems do better or not, and if there's like systematic ways that they are disadvantaged in this global network connectivity. And our research has so far focused on the global national relationships now, rather than what's going on within a nation in a detailed way. But what you say is shaping all science, because national, as we mentioned, national scale, nation state is pretty strong in shaping what is researched and how it is researched, and actually who researches as well. As you said, they choose specific universities, they give them more funding, and then this creates inequality within the country. And I think this is more felt, especially in some areas, like, for example, the areas that you need more funding will be affected more by this inequality. But maybe areas that needs less funding, they still need it, of course, but they may be less affected by this inequality created. It's created inequality in a way, trying to find the most efficient, quote unquote, way of promoting their national production, etc. And this competition is just increasing. It's everywhere. It's global rankings are impacting it. It's like a big challenge, and it's gonna shaping, and it's gonna keep on shaping how the science is done globally, I think. Thank you for that question. I think it's important to highlight. And thank you very much, Zahra. It's a very good question, and it's finally good to meet you. We've been discussing on Twitter before, but it's first time we're in person talking. So research evaluation system is another way, actually, nation states, the national regulations, policies shape science. And here, it's very important in Turkey, you are punished if you do collaboration. Because your points will be divided into, let's say you collaborated with 2 people, it's like 2 people in total, you'll get credit like 0.50 and the other gets 0.50. And that's actually very demotivating thing to collaborate. But Turkish people still collaborate. That's interesting. So in the qualitative fieldwork, we're actually at the very early stages. I did a few interviews, yes. I'll try to give some answers, but these are preliminary. Let's think of them as that way, because I'm still yet to do many more interviews. One thing is, I think, especially the international collaborations, when you collaborate internationally, that kind of gives you some being included in the global science, right? Especially the main narrative in Turkish, the ones that I have talked to, is we are part of the Western system. Usually that's what they say. And like the conferences they go, the PhDs they done. So the people I'm interviewing are actually the people who have done their PhDs abroad. This is like we chose top institution from each selected context. And so it may not be representative for everyone, but these are the ones that speak English and are kind of included in this global science. We had to kind of make that decision. So one reason behind is the sense of being included. And as you say, maybe recognition, right? So you are recognized if you work with other people who are working on this internationally. I think that's one reason. What could be another reason? I'm thinking funding is a very strong factor. It comes up, especially for Turkey, this European funding. Turkey is integrated to European funding opportunities, and people in Turkey compete for it. Sometimes people in Europe get it, and then they include Turkish colleagues. So funding shapes very strongly who you collaborate and how you collaborate. The fieldwork seems to show. So who are funding, those who funding research actually have an impact on global science in a very strong way. And the way Europe funds its research it's very collaborative. They require you to collaborate with others, and they require you to. And some actually professors were kind of critical about this. They say to get this funding, we need to include like some, we just have to include them, even though we don't need them for this research. So they end up adding people on paper this for European funds, and they were critical about that. But it's shaping how research is done, as you can see, the funding issues. Currently, let me think if there are other reasons. I think these are the ones that come to my mind, but I'm sure there are other reasons, and happy to discuss more. And if you already have some ideas as well, please feel free to let me know, like, oh, this could be also an important factor, because this is an ongoing research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf. We have one more question, and I hope that there will be at least one hand more during Franek asking this question. Come on, Franek.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was like really interesting and inspiring presentation and the discussion. And I think as a Christian have like a little more philosophical, theoretical question, because I was wondering, like, did you find some conclusion of your like theoretical choices that you presented at the beginning of the presentation with the finding of the presentation? Because you mentioned that you see as a limitation of like Wallerstein's approach that he's like very much focused on like crisis of global capitalism, and actually that like to deal with like central periphery inequality for Wallerstein, we need to focus on like crisis of capitalism and eventually possibility of like abolishment of like capitalist global world system. And as I understood, like your approach rather help us to study some shifts in inequalities in academia that do not undermine like capitalism as a world system. But like when you are studying these shifts, as for example, collaboration between Turkey and China, do you find like some limitation to such changes in science that do not actually challenge like capitalism as a system, or you think this is like a good way that we could really make like really pluralistic open science worldwide?
Okay, so I think
Should I go
this is
ahead?
what we
Oh, wait.
have. Thank you, Franek, and Yusuf, please conclude. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think very good question. So in our research, the general understanding, and not just our research, in the literature as well, the change is gradually happening. It's not like one day and the problem is solved. The general tendency that the literature has been saying, and in Caroline Wagner's studies, is that the network is gradually becoming less hierarchical. And this is happening with all the things going on, like capitalism is not abolished, it's still there. But the collaboration is less hierarchical. I mean, the other systems start to connect more with each other, and not directly through a central system. So it is happening without it. I mean, maybe the abolishment of the whole capitalism may make a bigger, larger change, but my current, perspective is that that's not going to happen anytime soon. I mean, just thinking, just looking at the developments going on in the world. So that's why our perspective is on agency of the actors and how they can change things. And I have to admit, to understand what's going on, especially for agency, I think we need more qualitative data. The quantitative data has shown some significant things, but it's not enough to understand how agency works. We have seen in our studies, for example, how national states do this. They can introduce, for example, the funding is the strongest thing they have actually, and some regulations, norms. For example, nations may want, hey, we have this geopolitical situation. This was especially more highlighted in China, especially in the qualitative studies as well. Let's say they want to facilitate collaborations with other countries, neighbors, and not just with the US, right? So the way they do it, nation states can include some regulations, some factors like additional fundings to, for example, collaborate with other systems, let's say. So funding is one of the main drivers of nation states. But then for individuals, as some of other colleagues like Marek or Caroline, they argue that individual prestige maximization is the main driver of international collaborations. So you see, now we see here a motivating factor clash. Like one wants to maximize its prestige and wants to go for top institution, US. But for example, nation may say, oh, don't collaborate. Okay, you can collaborate, but collaborate with others as well, and they facilitate others more. So the understanding here is more about maybe the harmonization, or at least how these motivating factors can work together in the global multiscalar science. And institutions may facilitate actually, again, for you to work with these top institutions. But again, the regional initiatives may have a differing perspective on this. For example, European institutions, their fundings are very useful, but they mostly encourage within Europe collaborations. So some studies show that when you compare, within Europe collaborations without collaborations, actually the difference is huge. But all the studies, they just say, oh, if it's between two nations, it's accepted as collaboration, right? So then we see huge collaborations happening within the nations in EU, but not much going on with, with those EU fundings with others outside this framework. So those things, there are competing motivating factors, seems to be more highlighted and will be more coming in the qualitative study. And these seem to be affecting the global science a lot. But abolishment of capitalism does not seem to be in the horizon in the short, soon future. And that, if that happens, well, will change things big time. But currently, no one is, I think, strongly trying to do that. Another point. Yeah, you
So
feel free to contribute.
like one of the countries in your sample, I would say, like is at least declaratively doing the work towards that horizon. And as far as I'm aware, Xi Jinping said that until 2050 there will be a full communism in China. So it's not super long horizon. But sorry.
No, yeah, within the country. But I mean, global science and global everything, it will be some countries like that and not all. So that is, of course, that is true.
Sure. Okay, you had one another point. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Me?
And you said so. Like there is one another point. If not,
Well,
no problem.
Yeah, I remembered about Zerha's question about, Turkey connectivity, right? What motivates them? And then I thought, how could this be different in Chinese systems? I mean, in Chinese, the individuals actually are motivated themselves to collaborate and diversify their collaborations. So for Turkey, you could see it's already a country located between East and West, right? And in everything, we see that bridging culture. And sometimes they're not sure, are we in East or are we Western culture? But in China, it's not much of a question. It's not like, are we Western or Eastern? No, it's an easy answer. So this also is reflected in the collaboration patterns. So for Turkey, people say, as a researcher, I find myself more connected with the West and East, blah, blah. But in China, it's the collaborators, the researchers have a different answer to this. They're not like, we're not sure, are we West or East? But they say, there's this Western hegemony. It's more accepted, more pronounced in the earlier findings. And we should be more aware of this, etc. But still, some national, institutional, and individual motivations, sometimes conforming and sometimes showing differences among them.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf, for all the super rich answers. I think that the topic is absolutely great, and papers that you recently published also provide some super insightful results. And I think that we all will be following your publication track and the content that you provide, you two, together with Lydie. And I think that it's like superbly important to study non-central patterns of science collaboration. And for this reason, this is like superbly important. And I'm really happy, truly happy that we had you here at this seminar series, because it's all about that science and semi-peripheries. So thank you for participation. Thank you to all our participants for asking the questions or thinking about asking ones. And if you want to ask something Yusuf or Lily, you have their emails, and I think that they are open for being contacted and approached through email. And I want to invite you to our future seminars. I've posted a link to our newsletter. If you want to stay updated about our future actions, please consider subscribing. And thank you. And we will see each other, some of us, on 13th of December. When we will have Tomasz Zaricki, Polish professor who studied science peripheries in the Eastern European context. He will be presenting about his recent book about language sciences in 100 years of Polish scientific periphery. So you're all welcomed and invited. Thank you for participation, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for